Hey there, movie fans. So I saw that new horror movie, Backrooms. Now, I didn't know anything going in this movie. I know there was a web series, which I haven't watched the web series, and that this is the first time directed. This is the first movie this director has ever directed. And I think it's really cool that we're getting these YouTube directors that are coming out directing these horror movies, and I think it's really just exciting to have new voices when it comes to filmmakers. So I knew nothing going into this movie, and like I said, I didn't watch the web series. My overall thoughts on this movie is that I thought it was okay. I did find this movie to be overrated. I know a lot of people loving this movie. For me, it was just fine. Let me start with the positives of this movie. I think when it comes to the experience of this movie, I think the experience of the movie is great when it comes to really does a great job with atmosphere, with really making you feel creeped out and like kind of like like a little closed space when he's in the back rooms and it kind of looks like an office space. It makes you really feel tense and really creeped out, and I think that has a great atmosphere to it, and just really makes you feel like when you see him going through those hallways, it really does feel endless. So atmosphere wise, and just the experience and the feeling and the creepy feeling of the movie, it's great at that. Production design wise, I think the movie looks great. It's very well shot. The things that he runs into in those bathrooms where it's like a deconfigured things that are like supposed to be like memories of people from all world, but they look a little off. I think the just the visuals of those look really creepy in the movie. So visually wise, production wise, it's great in this movie, and I think both actors, performance wise, are great. Especially Elia was Chu Chewy Elafor, or some I know I'm probably pronouncing that name wrong. He's been in a couple of things. He was in the two Doctor Strange movies, and he's great in everything. I think Chuyo Ejiofor to me always gives a great performance as an actor, and he does a great job in this movie performance wise. So, and I think the girl who plays his doctor is great in this movie too. So performance wise, I think both actors are great in this movie. When it comes to the negatives with this movie, one of the negatives for me is that the story I felt like was just fine. To me, I feel like it had an interesting setup story wise. It had me intrigued with the mystery. I feel like as the movie went along, it got less interesting. I also felt like they left too many things vague. And look, I haven't watched the web series, so maybe there's stuff in the web series that explains this more when it comes to the backrooms and all that. I just feel like they left too much vague though. I don't have a problem with movies if you want to leave some mystery. I feel like this movie just left just a little too much vague to a point where I was like, okay, I feel like you could have explained a little bit more. It also wraps up in a way where I was like, I wasn't a fan of how the story wraps up at the end. I was just like, really? That's how you're gonna wrap up the story? Just the ending didn't really land for me. And look, I don't know how you would have ended it. I'm not a writer, so for me personally, though, the third act felt apart for me, and it just got less interesting as the story went along. And it's overall the narrative I thought was fine. This is a movie that's more about the experience, which is it's fine, but I'm a story and character driven person. And that's another thing for me is that I never really felt like I got invested in these characters. Even though I think Charlie Eldrio 4 gives a great performance, it's like I felt like he does have a story arc. I feel like I feel like that wasn't. I didn't feel like it was the main focus of the movie. I feel like they could have dived more into that. Like they could have. I felt like they could have gone further with with the with his little story arc. It just feels like to me, it kind of felt like they didn't like dive enough into his story arc, and it just feels like more like it felt like more like this movie's more about like the experience and atmosphere, which is fine. I just never really got mostly invested in his characters though. Even though he gives a great performance, I never really felt like I got mostly tied to his character in the movie. So character wise, like great performances, I just never got attached to these characters though. So that was a problem for me. Again, I'm a story and character driven person. So I just never find myself mostly invested in these characters. And another problem with this movie for me is that I did find it slow. There was times in the movie where it was a little too slow for me. Like I feel like when it gets interesting when we get to the back rooms, And then those times in the middle of the movie, I was like, it feels like the pacing is a little slow for me. So it's one of those movies where I don't have a problem with slow bones in movies as long as it's like you give me as long as you give me characters I can get invested in, and you give me a story that's really like compelling. Then I don't have a problem with slow bones. It's just the pacing of the movie at times felt like it was a little too slow, and because I never really got invested in these characters, and the story just got less interesting as it went along, the mystery, and it left too much vague. I just never really it just for me pacing wise, it felt at times the story was a little slow. So overall, I thought Backrooms was fine. I can this is a horror movie I see a lot. I see a lot of people love it. Was look if you're just looking for a really creepy atmosphere movie and a great experience when it comes to how a movie makes you feel, you know, I can understand people really liking this movie. For me, I'm a story and character person, and I felt like this movie, story wise, was fine. It to me, it's a story that had an interesting setup. As we went along, it got less interesting for me, and I just never really got attached to these characters. So overall, I thought Backrooms was fine. It was, and the third act for me just didn't land. I don't know how you would have ended the movie personally. For me, I just the third act, I was like, okay, that didn't really work for me. How you wrapped it. So that's my thoughts on Vacuum. Personally, I find it to be just okay, overrated. That's just me. Until next time, fans.